Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Hello and welcome today. You are really going to have a fantastic experience today. It's just going to be a wonderful, memorable forum. We're very pleased and honored to have two career expert, world-renowned, really, teachers from the Miami-Dade area to discuss their work with teaching children logical thinking skills, so critical in this era of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. We have Janas Byrd. Unfortunately, she's not right here in the sanctuary with us, but she is conducting bird watching, a logical skill-oriented bird watching experience outside. And Bertha and Janas have both today had some very, very innovative, imaginative activities with our children. They really are spending a lot of time with the RE kids today, so we're very grateful for that. First, I'll tell you a little bit about Janas. Frankly, the bios could take forever, so I'll have to abbreviate them a little bit. But Janas Byrd, who's out with our younger kids right now, earned her Bachelor of Arts in English at Florida International University in 1989 and her Master of Arts in Reading from Nova Southeastern in 1994. She has taught English, ESOL, it's English as a second language, reading, journalism, and creative writing at both the middle and the high school level. Additionally, now she is teaching advanced placement seminar and research activities, courses, which are really college-level courses in high school. She's been a teacher with the Miami-Dade Public Schools for 32 years. These are the public schools in Miami-Dade. They're just outstanding schools. She was recognized as a Teacher of the Year at Turner Technical Arts High School and George Washington Carver Middle School. Janas was also awarded the Mainstream Teacher of the Year and Vocational Mainstream Teacher of the Year for her work fostering inclusive classroom communities. Teaching, however, is just one of her passions. She has a number of others. As a native Floridian, she enjoys hiking on the Florida hiking trails, boating in the Keys, and bird watching on her back porch. She is truly a voracious reader and a writer. In 2013, she combined her love of middle grade novels and creative writing. She was a Stony Brook Children's Literature Fellow in 2013, and writes mysteries and ghost stories set in South Florida. She currently lives in Miami with her husband David and their two children, Thomas and Catherine. Her family and pack of noisy rescue dogs find their way often into the stories that she writes. Now today we're just really honored and privileged to also have Bertha Vasquez, who's going to deliver the forum. Again, her biography is extensive. Bertha is a graduate of the University of Miami, and she recently retired from teaching middle school science in the Miami-Dade public schools after 35 years in the classroom. And she is currently the education director. She's been the education director of the Center for Inquiry. And you'll find a lot of their literature, their information outdoors on the table there in the pavilion. Please help yourself learn about this extremely important organization. She's the education director for CFI, Center of Inquiry, and her work currently includes 3 projects: the Teacher Institute for Evolutionary Science, which she'll tell you about, TIES, we call it, Science Saves, and her new innovative program teaching young children logical thinking skills known as Generation Skeptics, or Gen Skeps. She is the recipient of several national and local honors, too many to mention today, really, but one including the National Center for Science Education's 2023 Friends of Darwin Award. And by the way, she is a good personal friend of Darwin, yeah, no. Of Richard Dawkins. And she also has received Samsung's 2014 $150,000 Solve for Tomorrow contest and the $5,000 Charles C. Bartlett National Excellence in Environmental Award in 2009. She was the Miami-Dade Science Teacher of the Year in 1997, 2008, and 2017. Thanks to the success of her program TIES, the Teacher Institute for Evolutionary Science, she was also the recipient of the 2017 winner of the National Association of Biology Teachers Evolution Education Award. She's an avid tennis player, a bashful ukulele player. That's her. Those are her own words. And she lives with her husband and her son in Miami. Welcome, Bertha.
Hello, and hello again. It's good to be back. I've met some of you before. Thank you for having me again. As Jeannie was saying, these three programs fall under the umbrella of Daniel. Next slide. Oh, I don't need that. You don't need it. That's good. Okay, so the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science falls under the umbrella of, next slide, we have the Center for Inquiry. And so these three education programs are in the Center for Inquiry. Next slide. I wanted to tell you quickly a little bit about them. TIES is all about evolution education. It is sometimes a difficult topic to teach. And if you don't feel comfortable with a topic, you may not teach it very well, or you kind of avoid it. And this is one of those topics where you might have parent pushback. And we know that here in Florida, that's becoming a more and more popular thing to do, is to push back against your teachers, just so many of us are leaving. And so that's to give teachers the skills and the resources to teach evolution in an effective and engaging way. And so I love evolution is an amazing topic for me. And by the way, the table out there, take anything you want except the skulls. The skulls is a wolf and 3 types of dogs, which I try to guess what they are. I won't tell you. So it's just an example of some of the resources that we have when we do the evolution stuff, the TIE stuff. The second program, which I'm very excited about, and I am going to spend about 5 minutes, even though I'm not supposed to, on Science Saves today, because Science Saves is this wonderful, nonpartisan program to promote science appreciation. That's all we do, just promoting, yay, science. And the third one, which I am going to talk about, and it is so important, especially for you guys over there, and especially because it's an election year here in the United States, is Generation Skeptics. Thanks, Daniel. Everything's free. Everything's free. So if you have teachers in your orbit, please let them know about this, and I'd be happy to come back and do some teacher workshops, okay? Because I love staying with Jeannie and Bill and going boating and having excellent dinners, so just call me back. Call me back and I'll come back. Next slide. And I love your kids, but we'll get to that. So this is what I said. It's about Science Saves, and I get to buy toys, and I bought this toy. The kids don't know what this is, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't, because hashtag Science Saves. But some of us, thank you. This is an iron lung. And our kids don't know what this is. Why do our kids not know what this is? Thank you. Because in 1953, Jonas Salk announced the successful polio vaccine trials. And this was practically, they're still lingering right in some parts of the world, but polio, the scary, scary virus, was eradicated. If you asked a parent in 1950 what their greatest fears were, it was nuclear war and polio. Can you imagine living in this? young people here, this is to scale. You can look at it later. And that is why we started Science Saves. Because those of us born in this 20th and 21st centuries, we forget what life was like. We forget that in the year 1800, almost half of all children died before their 5th birthdays. Almost half, 45% of all children died before their 5th birthdays. Could you imagine how hard that must be for families? How tragic. And today, because of antibiotics and vaccines and antiseptics and washing your hands, simply washing your hands, and a million other things brought to us, courtesy of the scientific method and humans who care about their fellow humans, almost everybody in this country makes it past their 5th birthday. Okay? So that's called Science Saves. Next slide. Thank you. I want to tell you quickly about this. If you have a high school senior or soon-to-be high school senior, we give away $15,000 cash every year to high school seniors in the U.S. who can tell us in 30 seconds or less how science has improved their lives or the lives of someone they know. Boy, kids are good with videos. Kids are amazing with technology. You should see our winners from the last 2 years. And you can find them on sciencesaves.org website. I'd love to see more Florida kids win. We had 2 Miami kids win 2nd and 3rd place a few years, first year. So get your young people involved in this. It's cash. It goes to their house. It doesn't go to their university. So it's that the donor says he doesn't care if they use it for spring break, pizza, books, a car, dorm, tuition. So think about that. Next slide. Okay, and Jeannie has posted that QR code on the door of the building as you walk out. We are asking states to proclaim March 26th, that is the day Jonas Salk in 1953 said, I have successful vaccine trials, as National Science Appreciation Day. And Florida is not among the many states. We have over 25 at this point. We just got Kansas, we just got New Mexico, we just got Oklahoma, among the many states that, these are these beautiful proclamations that you see up there, that has declared, yay science, March 26th, Richard Dawkins jokes, because that happens to be his birthday. Like, it's not about you, Richard. It's about Jonas Salk and the successful vaccine trials. So all you need to do is click on that QR code with your phones on your way out, and you can sign the petition for your state to declare a National Science Appreciation Day. And you're wondering, when is she getting to the generation skeptic stuff? This is not about generation skeptics. Next slide. Oh, I want to quickly tell you about Science Clash. This is so much fun. Just like March Madness and the NCAA tournament, we're going to have a Science Clash. Go ahead, Daniel. I'm going to show you we have brackets and we have contestants. One more. That thing's right in the middle. You could only see some of them, but every week we say, okay, air conditioning versus vaccines. Which one is better? Which one has saved more lives? Water chlorination versus renewable energy, radiology versus medical thermometers. And I love the conversations that pop up, and you vote online, and you see the winners, just like March Madness, just like a tennis tournament, getting to the middle. And this year, it's scienceclash.org, Science Clash 2023. It's a great thing for teachers to start their class or for you to play at home. Because really, I don't know, blood transfusions or sewage systems. Those are both very important things we don't even think about. So it's called Science Clash. Thank you, Daniel.
Hello, I'm Bertha Vasquez, and welcome to the 2024 Science Clash, presented by Science Saves. Last year, Fire beat out 31 other nominees to take the title of greatest scientific achievement of all time. Over the next few weeks, we'll be putting 16 literal lifesavers into head-to-head matchups, with the winners advancing based on your votes. In the end, we'll announce the people's choice for the greatest life-saving scientific advancement of all time. I'll be here in our Science Clash studio, breaking down each matchup with help from our bracket brainiac, Marty Smith. Make sure to follow Science Saves on social media and cast your vote in every round at scienceclash.org.
It's fun. It's a fun thing to do. Yeah, Jeff Dellinger did that. That was not me. So, okay, now we're back. This is where I wanted to be. Generation skeptics. Let me segue. All the content that we know, all the stuff in our science textbooks, everything on Wikipedia, all that knowledge, We got that knowledge because of the process that I used to help you guys this morning, the scientific method. It is the best way that humans have of figuring stuff out. And I ask you, how much information is exchanged in one day? I'm going to ask Daniel to bring up this next slide slowly, thing by thing. And I'll tell you what, I don't even know what some of these words mean. 500 million tweets. 294 billion emails. So far, I understand. The next one's the one that I don't know what a petabyte is. I'm sure Ryan knows what a petabyte is. I don't know what a... Shoot them all up. 65 billion messages on WhatsApp. 65 billion messages. You know, it takes 33 years to count to a billion, a number a second. So I just think about how many messages that is. Just go on up. 5 billion searches, terabytes. And the last one is the one I like because I could relate to it. By next year, 463 exabytes, that's 212 million DVDs per day of information is exchanged online. And the big question is, Daniel and I are totally in sync at this point. Did you see I didn't have to say next slide or anything? How much is this misinformation or disinformation? And how important is it to teach our children this? Because my good friend Melanie Teresa King, who's going to join us on Zoom in a few minutes, she said to me, you know, Bertha, when you guys go walk into a classroom and you teach your students, they assume, let me ask you, you assume that what your teacher's teaching you is real, it's correct. So when I do the electromagnetic spectrum and the rainbow and the different wavelengths, you assume I'm not lying to you. I'm not giving you misinformation. When we do the parts of the cell and that plants have this and animal cells have that, you're taking what I'm saying as truth. But when you walk out of my classroom and you look at that phone and you look at all that information, a lot of it isn't true. And how are you going to know? You can't just throw it all out the window. You can't just walk around thinking, oh, everybody's lying to me. Everything's a conspiracy. Big Pharma doesn't want me to know. Like, you can't walk around like that. So what you have to have are the tools to figure out what's true and what's not true. And that's really hard these days. They're so sophisticated at giving us misinformation. So on we go to the next slide. This is just, I swear this took me 30 seconds. The guy going like this, that's a magnetic bracelet that cures your tennis elbow or something. Who saw Michael Phelps with the cupping at the Olympics? That very same day that Michael Phelps showed up with those circles on his back, cupping was Googled millions of times around the world. So kids are getting that. And then we have these gummy bears that you lose all that weight in 20 days. You know, and by the way, those gummy bears were endorsed by Oprah Winfrey. And she had to come out and say, I never endorsed this. I did not do this. So they're very bold. They're very brazen. So this is what our kids especially, our kids on social media are just getting this. What can we do for them? Daniel, thank you. So is this a sign of things to come? That gentleman was a candidate last year to be president of Slovakia. Deep fake AI videos came out about him saying, I'm going to raise the price of beer. I was in Slovakia last September. It is the highest beer drinking country in the world per capita. And they also came out saying, I'm going to rig the election. They were him. His face, his video was perfect. He lost. He was the NATO-backed, European-endorsed candidate. I get chills saying this. Guess who won? The Putin-backed candidate. All that deep fake came out of Russia. Man, they're good at this. And guess what? This is an election year in the United States of America. Are we ready for this? Next slide. Enter Generation Skeptics. And Generation Skeptics used to be called Young Skeptics. And it was founded with Center for Inquiry. And I'm talking about the Center for Inquiry was started by people like Carl Sagan and Isaac Asimov. I'm very proud of working for this organization. And it's to get young people to realize that not everything is true. You don't share right away. You think about it. That doesn't mean everything is not true, but just think about it before you accept. Think about it before you post. Next slide. I think we could skip that one because it's, okay. I want to tell you about some of the lessons that we use to do this. And the first one, and again, Melanie's going to join us in a little while via Zoom. She's sitting in Tennessee. And that first one, How to Sell Pseudoscience, is based on an article that she wrote. I have a slide about each of these, so let's just move to the slide where I can talk briefly. Melanie figured out the 9 tricks that scammers use to sell you something. And then I created a lesson where students learn these 9 tricks and create a product of their own using these 9 tricks. And the idea is, next time they walk into a store and see a product with these tricks, they're going to go, oh, I recognize that. Almost like a vaccine against pseudoscience. You know what I'm saying? So some of the tricks are get you to commit, 24-day guarantee, money-back guarantee. Big Pharma doesn't want you to know. Use stuff like all plant-based, nature-based, ancient wisdom. Use science babble, like attempts to fix the mitochondrial ATP passages of the hydrogen ions within the cristae, like stuff like that. Just use words that people sound very sciencey. And also get an expert. And so the next slide shows my own students. That's Ryan on the... The little guy is Ryan Rodriguez, and the tall guy going like this, that's John Dave. I had them for 2 years. And all the stuff on the blue side is gluten-free, no side effects, enhances cellular respiration, detoxifies bone marrow at the cellular level, expels microscopic carcinogens, BMA approved, I don't know what that is, used by millions through the ages. So they had to check all the boxes that a pseudoscience is going to use to sell their product. Next time those kids come back, they're going to, next time they go to a store, they're going to recognize that. Here's the one I did with your students, your children, this morning. This is a thing. I showed the kids, right? Online, people yell, I love you to this jar of rice, and I hate you to that jar of rice. And guess what? The I hate you jar grows mold. This is a thing. It's all over YouTube. You could look it up. And so the kids this morning wrote an experimental design to test this. And we learned 2 golden rules of science. Golden rule number 1 is multiple samples, not 1 jar per group, 1,000 jars per group. And the other very important thing is the double blind. The person yelling, I hate you, is not the same person checking for mold. You know, that's like, they shouldn't know which jar it was in which group. You don't put the I hate you group and the I love you group. You put blue and yellow. And it's double blind. And then what they had to do is go back to their experimental designs and add these 2 very important features. And to question stuff online. To don't accept everything at face value. Actually, mold is alive. So when you say, I hate you, you're promoting life. That's what I thought when I first saw it. Great. The next one is, Simon. There you go. The next, I have a couple wonderful resources. How do you know when something's credible and when something's not credible? And we let the kids practice. Because again, I don't want kids to walk out and think, everything is a conspiracy. Everybody's trying to make money off of me. Everybody's lying to me. There are things some things are real and based in science, you know? So what we do is, for example, these 2 websites, I tell them, go to Save the Pacific Tree Octopus and go to Save the Pangolin. And which one's real? How do you know? And we have websites and stuff. There's no such thing as a Pacific tree octopus, by the way. But we really should save the pangolins. They're nature's walking artichokes. I love them. We teach them to go to different sites like Snopes and verify information before you hit that share button, right? Thank you. This is the one that Janice did with the little ones this morning. Ghosts, haunted houses, and social media. And she ties those two things in beautifully, and they got Scooby snacks. You know, Scooby-Doo, those kids were onto something. Do you remember Scooby-Doo? They always figured out that it wasn't a ghost. It was somebody trying to make money off the land or scare off developers or something like that. Scooby-Doo actually was a pretty cool show. And I'll show you some haunted houses. So this is a haunted house, and one of the things she showed the kids this morning is that picture, the black and white picture, if you look at the windows especially, you'll realize that the bushes are exactly the same as this modern picture. They took the modern picture and made it look old. And that's one of the ways that you can tell that something funky is going on. But my friend Melanie is, one of the reasons she's here is that she promotes this idea called lateral searching, and I'll get there afterwards. So this picture is going to come back up. So we teach kids to think. Thank you, Daniel. So how do we know? There's so much different types of misinformation out there. And Jeannie and I were talking about that third one. Raise your hand if you've heard of misinformation. All of us, pretty much. Disinformation. What's the difference between misinformation and disinformation and malinformation? Okay, let's go in order. Misinformation is you don't realize it's wrong. You click share. You're honestly just trying to share some good information. You don't realize that it's false. For example, you see that there's this thing that says, oh, there's this new virus, and if you gargle with salt water, you won't get it. It's not true. But they spread it anyway. They're not trying to hurt you, but they're spreading misinformation. That's misinformation. Disinformation is when you're doing it on purpose. You're spreading this with the intention of spreading fake information. Like climate change is a hoax, this is the coldest year on record. They know exactly what they're doing. Okay, so, and then malinformation is very different. Malinformation is taking something that's actually real and twisting its meaning. Those emails that you get with all your perfect bank information, it looks completely real, but it's actually an attempt to steal your bank information. That's malinformation. And we have a photo coming up. This picture is the terrorist attack, the Westminster Bridge terrorist attack in London in 2017. And at South Lone Star is a Twitter handle, and he calls himself a proud Texan and American patriot. And this is what he wrote. Muslim woman pays no mind to the terror attack, casually walks by a dying man after checking phone. Well, that is a real picture, and she was on her phone. She was calling 911. Okay? She was identified, and she received death threats, and her family received death threats. But this is the scary part. There is no man in Texas with an @Lone Star Twitter handle. It is a Russian bot. So you click share on this picture, and you're spreading malinformation. He's using a real picture to cause harm. In this case, the Muslims in general, and this poor woman in particular. So what the heck, what can we do? We have to stop and think. Thank you, Daniel. Actually, if you take a closer look at that picture, you'll see she's upset. She's not casually walking by, but she's on the phone calling for help. We are starting, thank you, Daniel, sorry, I made you go back. We're starting Gen Skeps clubs at different schools. Our 2 Florida clubs are not in good shape because now there's this thing called Form 2424. Have you heard of this? If you're in the classroom, you do. Every time you have a new book being shown in your classroom, every time there's a guest speaker, every child has to take a form home, get it signed, and bring it back. So in Miami-Dade County, they actually stopped club meetings for the month of December till they could figure out how to handle this situation. So our 2 Florida clubs, we had one in Orlando and one in Miami, aren't doing too well right now. Because that means that every time we bring in a guest speaker or something, we have to have all the kids go home, get the paper, bring it back. So anyway, maybe in another state. We have these wonderful guest speakers that could zoom into classrooms, and Melanie is the blonde lady in the middle there, and she's listening in right now. So let me tell you something about these very cool people. I'm going to check. I'm good, right? I still have more than half hour? Good, I'm very good. Boom, next slide. Susan Gerbich, she is so cool. She was in the New York Times. Susan Gerbich goes through Wikipedia with her guerrilla skeptics and fixes the pages. If you say you're a psychic and it's really real, she goes in there and shows that you're not. You know, that kind of thing. She sets up psychic stings where she gets 200 people to become Facebook friends. And I am not a 56-year-old woman from Miami. I'm a 25-year-old guy in Seattle who loves football and canoeing. And for a year, I just post pictures of myself as a 25-year-old guy who loves football and canoeing. And Jeannie's a 40-year-old guy whose mom just had breast cancer, so you post a lot about breast cancer. And then you all go see the psychic together. You're all friends of each other on Facebook. You're not real people. You're all friends of each other on Facebook, and the psychic will go, there's a gentleman in here. I see breast cancer in his family, and of course, that person doesn't exist. That's Jeannie's character that she's been playing on Facebook for a year. It takes a long time to get these Facebook groups going, and because it has to be, if the psychic goes to these Facebook groups, it has to be a group that's been there for a long time and that they have a lot of friends, or the psychic's going to go, no, this is fake. So Susan does this for years sometimes before they go and see the psychic together. She's super cool, and she could zoom in. She's hilarious, such a cool lady. She could zoom in and do a presentation for you. The next person, oh, there's Susan. You could find her online. The next person is these two guys. They're awesome. That's Jim Underdown in the cap and Kenny Biddle. And they do all sorts of investigations. So next slide. For example, we have a paranormal challenge. You can make $500,000 right now if you call Jim Underdown and you say, I can move things with my mind, or I am psychic, or I can move clouds with my mind. And they set up an experiment together and they test it. This money's been there since the 70s. It started with James Randi, actually. And if you show the next slide, this woman, PsyCon is in Las Vegas. It's the big conference that we have for the Center for Inquiry. And she claimed that she could move clouds. So this is the rooftop last October of the Flamingo Resort and Casino. And I was with Jim that morning having breakfast, and he was worried because there were no clouds, because it is Las Vegas. And, oh, good, there's clouds now. And she was trying to move the clouds, and she couldn't move the clouds. So she did not win the $500,000. So this is one of the things that we do. It's called the $500,000 Paranormal Challenge. Next slide. Kenny Biddle, he's our ghost hunter. He was a real ghost hunter for a while. He had some experiences where he realized, whoa, I'm wrong. There are no ghosts. And he shows you, for example, in this video, he's building one of the things that ghost hunters use to find ghosts. And they make $200 if you buy this from them, but he's showing you that you can make it for about $10 with stuff from the hardware store. And so he goes in the back and shows you what these people do to promote their products. And finally, we have Melanie. Melanie is she is a biology teacher in Massachusetts, and she has a whole website it's called Thinking is Power. Just like knowledge is power, but actually figuring stuff out is power. Thinking is power. And remember I told you, well, let's do this first. So she's all over the internet. She's really fun to watch. And so there was this Teletubby hoax. Have you heard about where the Teletubbies come from? The children's video? So there was a thing on TikTok that the Teletubbies their story originates in an insane asylum for children in Eastern Europe. And she wants to show you this thing called lateral searching. Instead of staying on the website, Pacific Tree Octopus, and looking through that website, do a lateral search. Get out of the website and Google Pacific Tree Octopus. Bam! Immediately what you're going to see is a hoax used by teachers to teach students not to believe everything they see. It's so much easier when you do a lateral search. Dan, can you hit the Teletubby link for me? Have you heard the
11-year-old niece,
Teletubby hoax?
who's not on social media, recently sent me a YouTube video that was pretty questionable, and it originated from TikTok. And it got me thinking about how important it is for kids to be able to understand what they see online and learn how to fact check. So what I'm going to do is show you the original clip and then how to fact check that clip.
Here are some fun facts that are not fun, but you should still know about them. Well, Teletubbies is a cute, innocent show for kids, right? No! Actually based on a mental institute in Bulgaria called La La Land. These kids were locked out for days and people forget to feed them. So Lala's real name was actually Tulip. Her face was so deformed that she looked like she was smiling. She was locked up for so long her face turned yellow, and that's why she was the yellow Teletubby. Next we got the blue Teletubby based out of a Tollaway who was really naughty. One day he was punished by staying outside. Because of the cold, he froze to death and he turned blue, and that's why he's the blue Teletubby. Next we got the green Teletubby named Dipsy. He puked and vomited all the time because he was always sick. When he puked on the floor, nobody cleaned it up, so he just lied in his vomit for months. So he got sicker and sicker and he turned green. And last we got Po, which actually was my favorite. Her real name was Polia. One day she was playing with mud and she came home really tired, so she fell asleep by the fire. Not knowing it was Po, someone came and thought she was the log and threw her into the fire.
The Teletubbies conspiracy theory claims that the show was inspired by events in a Bulgarian mental facility called La La Land. Psychotic children were purportedly isolated in dark rooms, and apparently 4 children who died on the same day inspired the characters in Teletubbies. Lala's facial disfigurement and 5 years of isolation inspired Lala. Tuate, a deaf, facially deformed child, was tied to the fence outdoors and frostbitten, inspiring Tinky Winky.
Have you ever heard the dark truth about Dipsies and Pop?
Los Teletubbies se inspiraron en 4 niños.
The Teletubbies originated from something darker. We all know the famous kid.
These are disturbing facts about the Teletubbies.
It was all over.
Okay, so how do we fact check? The single most important first step to fact checking is to be skeptical. If you don't question whether something is true, then you're not going to check. Now, this video has a lot of red flags, but the power here is in looking laterally. Basically, you don't want to rely on a site itself to tell you whether it's reliable or not. Instead, open a new window and search the terms and then something like fact check. So here, as you can see, I searched Teletubbies Asylum fact check. And what I get here is a fact checking site, Lead Stories, that debunks this conspiracy theory. This site clearly explains that no, the Teletubbies were actually inspired by astronauts. The site goes on to explain that they don't actually give any evidence to support their conspiracy theory. Instead, what they're doing is relying on distorted images to make a scary-sounding story. And it even tells you where the Teletubby conspiracy theory originated from. I know a lot of us want to protect kids from misinformation online because there's a lot of it. But here's the thing, they see it whether we like to admit it or not. So giving them these skills will empower them to not be fooled. For more information, visit Don't Be Fooled Fact Check at thinkingispower.com.
Thank you. So that's one of the papers that was handed out to you. I've got 30 from this point. Very good. So remember that haunted house? Let me show it to you again. Go one more. This, I tried to figure out why this was wrong by looking at the picture. But if I did a quick Google search after speaking with Melanie, shoop. Immediately, I put Blackwell ghost hoax. Immediately, it says all fake. The Blackwell House is in Lexington, Kentucky, not Pennsylvania. It's owned by Turner Clay, fake paranormal researcher. So if you go out of the site and look it up and Google it, it's faster and it keeps you out of that place. It keeps you, where you're more likely to fall for it the longer you stay in that website. So that's called lateral searching. Next slide. Say hello to my friend Melanie. She's joining us in a little bit, but I think we have a few more slides, but she can join us. We're almost done. So this is the difficult part of this conversation where people start squirming a little bit and they feel uncomfortable. What about you? What about me? It's easy to make fun of somebody who thinks that Teletubbies originated in an insane asylum in Bulgaria. But do you think that everything you believe is true? I know that not everything I believe is true. I just looked through over the course of my life, and I realized that I used to believe some things that today are not true. So you're the easiest person to fool. Let's show a wonderful quote. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool, especially when you're emotionally tied to the content. So remember, the more you believe something, the more you feel about something, the more likely you are to fool yourself about it. And to be humble, and to aspire to be less wrong, and to consider that perhaps some of the stuff you believe isn't true. Next slide. Join us in SciCon. It's next October. It's a really fun conference where everybody who goes up there who talks about like the pseudoscience in wellness, the pseudoscience surrounding vaccines, the pseudoscience surrounding the tobacco industry or climate change. Really interesting speakers, really good speakers. Last year, Bill Nye was there. And remember, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I'm going to ask Melanie to join us now, and the reason is because she really has jumped deep into this stuff, and I feel like she knows a lot more than I do, and I learned so much from her that I wanted her to join us because I was scared you might ask me a question that I did not know the answer to. And I know that Melanie has the answer. So Melanie, we have time. If you could just give us a 2-minute explanation of why you do what you do.
First of all, I'm honored to be here, and I've learned a lot from you, so thank you very much. So I was teaching general education biology at a community college. This is biology for people who don't want to be scientists when they grow up, and I love biology. Like, I'm a biologist, but at some point I was just like, if I had a single semester to teach people what they needed to know about science and how the world works and how to find good information, would it be memorizing the steps of the Krebs cycle? Probably not. So I decided instead to create a course in its place that teaches what I call skills, not facts. And those skills would be critical thinking, information literacy, and science literacy. And of course, facts are important, but especially if you're not going to be a scientist when you grow up. I have to here, slight tangent. I was teaching students intro bio before the pandemic, and at this point, I really worry about them. Like, I feel like I failed them because we had a new virus, and we had a new vaccine, and we had new treatments. And do we mask? What kinds of masks? And what kinds of situations? And information was changing, and it was scary. And we all saw science play out in real time, and I worried that I didn't equip them to deal with that. So that's what I was trying to do with a new course. And then I created Thinking is Power in its place, because the idea is, we carry access to all of humanity's knowledge in our pockets, but also misinformation. The question is, when you need to find reliable information, can you find it and can you use it to make better decisions? So thinking is power.
Thank you, Melody. I want to ask you a second about, I watched the recent video with you. How do you talk to somebody, right? How do you talk to somebody who says vaccines cause autism? Or how do you talk to somebody that say the COVID vaccine is trying to kill me? You mentioned something called training wheels, skeptical training wheels, and explain what that means.
Yeah, so there's a couple of important parts to your question here. The training wheels approach is, there's some science and misinformation that's really important to cover in a science class. Like, for example, evolution. A lot of people believe evolution misinformation, climate change misinformation, or vaccine misinformation. But some people hold those beliefs really close to their identity. And so if I go into a classroom and I start with, hey, here's everything you know about climate change is wrong, right? And here's why you should just believe me. And I throw a bunch of facts at them, then they're not necessarily going to believe me. They're just going to get triggered and they're going to shut down. So the critical thinking training wheels approach involves starting with things that aren't triggering. So my first lecture, I start with the witch trials in Europe from the 14th through 17th centuries. And we talk about the kinds of things people believed. And importantly, they act on their beliefs, right? They thought that witches, usually women, were causing birth defects and, crops to die. And so they sought to find evidence to support what they already thought was true. And so they tortured people until they confessed and said, aha, see, I was right the whole time. And then they killed people. My students don't believe that stuff. And so they can look at that reasoning process and go, well, how good was that evidence? Does it support the conclusion they came to, especially their level of confidence? And my goal is to get them to internalize that process. But again, if I start with something that's triggering, then it's not going to be as effective. And the second part of your question was, how do we talk to people who hold these anti-science beliefs? On the surface, those things look like fact-based conversations. I have my facts, and I'm going to give them to you to try to convince you that I'm right. But you have yours too, and you're going to give me those. And so on the surface, it looks like we're talking about facts, but actually we're talking, that's the surface level. Underlying it is the motivations, our emotions and biases and worldviews that are fueling our search for facts, however cherry-picked or misleading they may be, to support what we already believe. So if we're going to have a productive conversation with someone who disagrees with us about these issues, I would encourage people to not stay at that level. The facts aren't going to do it because it's not about facts. We want to dig down to those underlying motivations on what might be leading people to find those justifications and connect with them at that emotional level. We all want the same things, right? We all want good things for our kids. We all want to be safe and to prosper. Find ways to connect with them there, build that connection, that trust, and then proceed from there.
So I heard you say once, ask somebody, how strong do you agree with this on a scale from 1 to 10, for example? So if I say, let's pretend. I say, Melanie, climate change isn't real. No way. Because, it's really cold in Miami right now, or Naples, sorry. It's really cold in Naples right now. It's not real. And last year I went skiing and there was 20 feet of snow. So I don't think this is real. What would you say to me?
Well, I probably wouldn't. My initial reaction, especially in the olden days before I learned all this stuff, was to say, well, that's an anecdotal fallacy. And that's just
what kind of fallacy? I'm sorry? What kind of fallacy?
An anecdote.
Anecdotal evidence, right?
Right. So I think it was Stephen Colbert made a funny out of exactly this example. And he said something to the effect of, I know world hunger isn't real because I just ate a sandwich. Right. So that's a fun example where comedians do this. They put parallel argumentation into something to make it absurd. And then you go, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Okay. But this idea of, do we have a couple of minutes? Because this is really fun.
A couple of minutes? I think we do. We have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. So the exercise I teach students is to start with proportioning your acceptance on a spectrum. So you could say, how sure are you that you think climate change is true? 0 to 100%.
90.
Okay. So then that first question actually is an important question because it automatically gets you to stop thinking about things as true or false, right or wrong, right? We know it or we don't. All knowledge is on a spectrum. So by saying 90%, okay, now you have automatically not put yourself at an extreme end, which is great. The second question, instead of saying, well, why are you so sure? I would say, why aren't you more sure? You said you're 90%. That's interesting. Why aren't you 95%? And by asking you that question, instead of getting you to find reasons to support why you think it's true, in this case, that climate change is a hoax, which you can do. We can find evidence for anything we want to believe. I've asked you to find your own reasons for why you might be wrong. Now, I could tell you why I think you might be wrong. but you're not going to listen to my reasoning. That's my reasoning. I've asked you to do it for yourself, right? So at the end of this conversation, we could proceed in here. Okay, well, why aren't you 95%? You could say, well, you could, and we could start exploring that. And importantly, we want to ask these questions from a place of real curiosity. These are not adversarial questions.
Right. Don't dig your heels in.
No, right. So we're in this together. Instead of viewing conversations as in, I'm right, you're wrong, I need to convince you that I'm right. There is a truth out there. And if our goal is to find that truth, whatever it is, then we stand the best chance by working together. We're on the same team. By making this a conversation between us of problem solving, trying to reason together, then we can get closer to that. So by modeling that in particular, I'm honestly just curious. Well, you said you think it's a hoax and you're about 90%. Well, why aren't you 95%? Well, and this could go back and forth. And at the end of the conversation, it's probably not going to be the case that if you were 90% convinced that climate change was a hoax, that I'm not going to end this conversation after 10 minutes with you being like, oh yeah, you know what? I was right my whole life. It's all been a lie. It's more going to be
slowly.
There was a seed planted.
Right.
Right. And we have established a rapport that we can hopefully come back to and work together again in the future.
There's another speaker that I didn't mention, and he has a site called Street Epistemology, Anthony Magnabosco. And he teaches you on this YouTube channel, he talks to people who have some of these beliefs, and he shows you how in a very respectful, kind way you can slowly make them think about their own belief systems. But I think we could take questions now if you want, Jeannie, and Melanie, if you don't hear the question, I'll repeat it for you in case I can't answer it.
You're good.
Thank you so much. This has just been a fantastic forum. Thank you. We're so appreciative for you, Bertha, and for Janice, and also our own RE director, Stephanie, too, for helping coordinate all these activities. It's just been wonderful. Okay, so let's take some questions. We're a little bit short on time, but I know you're going to have a lot of questions. So, okay, and please speak right into the microphone.
Well, I was just going to ask the question, in that exercise, which is very helpful, what do you do with somebody that might say, I'm 100% sure?
I was wondering the same thing. Melanie, what do you do with someone who says, I'm 100% sure the moon is made of cheese? Or something.
So, an easy way to do that is to imagine, so if I'm talking to you and you said 100%, imagine you know someone that is at a slightly less certain percentage. So they're at 90%. Why would they not be at 100%? So instead of making it personal, actually sometimes it can be helpful anyway, because when it's our beliefs, we become a bit more defensive about them. Put it in the third person. Imagine someone else.
Okay, yeah, so you're at 100%. My friend Melanie is at 90%. Why do you think she's not at 100%? That's what you're, like, put it in third person.
Are there fake sites for people trying to muddy the water for people who are doing what Melanie's doing?
Oof. I don't think so, but Melanie, are there fake sites to confuse people how to approach skeptical thinking? Have you encountered that at all? I have not.
You know, I haven't. The closest I've come is, look, we all think we're critical thinkers, and we all like to imagine that our beliefs are formed by following evidence to its logical conclusion. So I think it's more people who are honestly convinced that they are skeptics or critical thinkers. I have not run into anyone who's using that as disinformation, although it absolutely could be. I will say that I think that in this process of critical thinking, one of the best ways to inoculate people against good information is to convince them that no one else can be trusted, but you're the critical thinker. So it's the essentially pre-bunking them against good information. But my hope is that this process, at least with what I'm doing, is teaching people how to think. And so I don't want them to trust me. I want them to use what I'm teaching them to think for themselves. So yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think probably everyone in this room are faced with or have been faced with family members or friends who see or they have a family member that their political circumstances contrast completely, and there's almost it seems like we have no access to the mind of these close friends. How do we address this problem?
I have people rushing through my brain right now. I think that common ground thing that she said is very important. What that to maintain that kindness. I'm not that successful at the political stuff myself. It's hard. I get emotional. I get angry, and that's not a good thing. Melanie, do you have something to add to that? How do you speak to a family member that's sure that the election was stolen, for example?
Yeah. So the first thing I would recommend some resources. I would totally concur with the street epistemology. Actually, they have a new course and it's free. They're rolling it out in stages, but the first stage is already available and it's really wonderful. And the resources they have is great. Also, David McRaney has a book out called How Minds Change.
Oh, I've read that.
Also great.
So street epistemology?
Yeah, so that's course? Anthony Magnabosco's
Anthony Magnabosco. And a book called How Minds Change.
Could I interrupt here a second, perhaps? Oh, excuse me, Melanie. No, I was just wondering if perhaps we could send this information out. If Bertha can send it to me, then I would be sure to share it with the congregation in a newsletter, possibly.
Sure. I have that information.
Yeah.
And her information is on a paper that's going around as well.
But I would say one of the best things that you can do, and I know it's hard, and I'm guilty of this myself. Look, there have been family members that I just can't anymore because of some of their beliefs are so upsetting to me. So I'm calling myself a bit of a hypocrite in this process. However, if you can maintain connections with people, we are tribal creatures. We identify with people who hold similar beliefs that we do. And the more we're in an echo chamber where the people inside that hold those beliefs, but they're extreme beliefs that people outside don't hold, especially conspiratorial beliefs, then on the outside, they get mocked for that. They get shamed for it. And they get defensive and retreat further into that bubble. So the more you can maintain a connection, just humanize the other side and don't be on the other side. Try as much as possible to be on the same team and go back to that non-triggering approach. Find things that you can explore together that aren't triggering so that you can work together on this reasoning process and build those connections and then just maintain that open line of communication.
Thank you. This is most interesting. But on NPR, about 4 years ago, they had this thing. They talked about how do you talk to your family when you're on opposing. And whoever it was said, you start with, we both love this country.
Yeah, common ground.
Common ground. And that can give very many good discussions because that's what we want.
Right.
We don't want to shut anyone up.
Yes, we had the League of Women Voters, and actually our own Joanne Husky was instrumental in setting up this Reduce the Rancor seminar that many of you will have attended, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. But one of the speakers there, I think it was the retired House of Representatives, Richard Gebhardt, indicated that sometimes the conversation could start even a little bit before the climate change or the vax discussion with just touch points that could be very, very helpful in facilitating discussion. Like, for example, oh, you found out somebody lived in this particular development, and oh, what do you know, and then the conversation evolves. Or, oh, they have a University of Miami sticker on their car. Oh, I went there too. You know, just a simple, apparently trivial-looking touch points that can initiate a conversation and facilitate a deeper one.
And ask more questions than make statements.
Yes.
Ask them questions.
Yes.
Is there a way that you could, I think it's great that you're doing this for younger people, but everybody needs this. We all need this. So is there some way that you could advertise the critical thinking broader to an adult population?
And
more?
I think that's exactly what the Center for Inquiry does. And all their materials outside, grab a magazine, grab a bumper sticker, grab a pen, and look at their site. Because that's exactly what they do. They address all claims from Bigfoot to, anti-vax claims. And like Kenny, our ghost hunter, he doesn't go in saying, you're wrong, there's no ghost here. He's very kind, he's very respectful. Where are your noises? Let me see. And he shows you his method. And he has a ton of really great videos online, for example. As does Melanie, how do you address this type of thing? So Center for Inquiry is a way to go.
And Bertha, I'm wondering about the possibility of these clubs, if that might be some mechanism. Maybe some of our young people might be interested in a Gen Skeps club.
That would be great. We're trying to develop programming that we can give to summer camps and places like this where we give them everything they need and they run the clubs. Yes. But we need pilot programs so we can see what we've done wrong. If I develop this camp programming, it's not going to be 100% correct because I know I'm going to make mistakes because I don't believe everything I believe. And I have to be humble. So if we can pilot it here, for example, and these guys show me where I'm wrong, and oh, that didn't work, let me fix this, and then we could send it nationally, this would be a great place to do that.
Yes.
And I could stay with you and we could go boating.
Okay.
Fishing.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Maybe get in a little kayaking on the side.
Around here.
Okay. Are there any more questions? We have a little bit short on time, but I really would like to handle a couple more questions if we can.
Hi, yeah, I was wondering I'm sure you have thought about the legal aspects of your activities, and if you expose some enterprise that's making money from disseminating misinformation, and you try to expose that, you may be liable for damages.
Yeah.
And even if you go to court, then it's how well does science hold up in court, and it doesn't always hold up in court.
We have a legal department, and we welcome those challenges. The Center for Inquiry has a legal department, and for example, they said, find out the first book that they tell you can't have in your classroom, you give us a call, and that kind of thing. So yeah, they have a very good legal department. And they've been challenged. For example, we filed a lawsuit, not I did, our legal department, against CVS for having the homeopathy medicine on the same shelf as the real medicine. And we said, you have to separate that, and you have to say, this is not FDA approved, this is homeopathy. And the judge said no, because we are not a public advocacy organization. So we went back and became a public advocacy organization, and now we're refiling the lawsuit against CVS, and I think Walgreens might be in there as well. Don't quote me on that. So we do have a legal department that does those things.
Thank you for your program today. having worked in drug and alcohol addiction for a number of years and using something called motivational interviewing with people who don't believe they have a problem is essentially what happens. And the work of Miller and Rolnick, their groundbreaking book to discuss with people something they don't want to discuss. Are you guys using that model in this motivational interviewing? You know, where you're trying to develop discrepancy with people about what they believe, you know?
I need to look that book up. Miller and?
Rolnick.
Miller and Rolnick.
And it's called motivational interviewing. And as you were speaking about this, I was noticing that some of the points you make are very similar to their whole model of therapy that you use with people who deny their issue.
Their
And
addiction.
you start there. You start with a relationship, of course.
Melanie, have you heard of this book? And
yeah, well, motivational interviewing, cognitive behavioral therapy, and street epistemology, Braver Angels. There's another deep canvassing. They essentially share a lot of these same traits in common. And what's fascinating is they've kind of all come at the same end from different aspects, which actually I think is part of the brilliance. I'm just going to plug David McRaney's book again. What he does is he puts all of those together and says he's exploring how each of these almost disparate organizations and techniques have all arrived at the same methodology because it seems to work.
that's like the convergence of evidence for evolution. It's all coming from different places and coming to the same conclusion. So that makes it stronger. Thank you for bringing that up. I've got to look that book up.
Interesting. Are there any more questions? Thank you so very
Mel.
much. This was truly outstanding. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so very much.
Don't share. Don't repost. Look it up first. Hi, we met last time.